Staff turnover is high. How do I handle a lot of my staff moving on or not keeping reliable staff there in office? This is a common problem that you hear time to time, and it's not just from medical industry, but all industries are facing with this. Struggling with your medical practice? Here are some common questions that we get all the time. As a digital health entrepreneur, we run into medical practice owners, nurse practitioners, doctors, clinic owners all the time and helping them grow their medical practice or clinic. We get a lot of questions and I want to go through these multiple ones. A lot of these practice owners have thousands of patients that they work with, and this is something that can get you through the hump on understanding how you can grow your medical practice. One of the top questions that we get all the time is around reimbursements. Reimbursements are down. So how do you solve that problem? There's multiple ways you can do it. One of the first things we do when we work with our medical practice owners is we need to understand where they are on the map. If you go to a mall, for instance, they always show you where you are in a big star to determine where you need to go next. And so we like to understand where the baseline lies with your medical practice before we can understand how we can help you with your medical reimbursements. One of the things that we found is that a lot of practices billing is just not properly set up. A lot of times their accounts receivable is not correct. They're not dealing with denials fast enough. They have issues with posting into their ER, into their clearinghouse. So these are a lot of billing questions that come up. A lot of times you have a great biller. I'm not saying you change, but sometimes it helps to bring in a third party to kind of look at it. Just like if a patient came to you and asked you for your results for a diagnosis, the patient may want to get a second opinion just to collaborate and see how things fit together. Likewise, if you have a business is an organism, just like the human body, you need to get a second opinion to see what you're sensing is correct. In a lot of cases, it's something simple that your current biller can handle. Some cases, it's more drastic, and you may need to have that third party take over billing in order to handle some of the challenges that you're running into with growing your medical practice. Once you kind of get a good, firm, established take of your medical billing, the next step is to understand where to go from there. You have a sense of your medical billing, you understand where your inflows are and what your outflows are. Next, you need to understand how you can optimize. That means looking at your staffing, making sure your front office staff, the ones who deal with the patients, handle questions from the patients, and your back office, the ones who are doing billing, claim setups, handling some of your back-end scheduling. You want to make sure they're in sync and unified, that people are doing what they need to be doing, because that's going to affect your profitability. If you don't have the right staff doing what they should be doing and not optimized, you're going to run into issues running your medical practice. Once you kind of optimize that, you want to then kind of dive into, okay, this is what my profitability is. What new opportunities can exist so I can take advantage of it? One of the big things that you need to realize is trending. Reimbursements are down sometimes because what you have been doing may not be what's optimized from a reimbursement standpoint. For instance, if you are still doing fee for service and you're not taking advantage of value-based care programs, things like remote patient monitoring, chronic care management, then you're going to run into multiple issues where you're not going to be able to maximize your reimbursement for the work that you do. So you want to ensure that you're riding the wave and not being taken under by it. So look at reimbursement opportunities that tie into growing areas of Medicare. That's with value-based care programs, but also that can be dealing with things like clinical studies and clinical trials. So those are some of the things that you really want to go down the path of. So if you're looking at reimbursements being down, first, you want to understand where you are when it comes to reimbursements, understand your billing, you want to optimize your staff and your workflows, and then finally, you want to ride the wave, the trend of where reimbursements are going so you can maximize your reimbursement ultimately. All right, let's get to the next question. Staff turnover is high. How do I handle a lot of my staff moving on or not keeping reliable staff there in office? This is a common problem that you hear time to time, and it's not just from medical industry, but all industries are facing with this. You may have heard of terms like quiet quitting, and this is where employees would simply stop doing their job, especially remote employees. But as a medical practice that's trying to grow, that is hard when you have people who are not doing their job, and it's also very visible. So how do you handle this and deal with staffing? Well, one of the things that we found is helpful is making sure you have a process in place up front to ensure you manage the inflow of people coming into your medical practice. So for instance, when you're doing interviewing, you want to make sure you follow a set structure to ensure you're interviewing properly. This should be based on culture. If you have a culture understanding, you want to convey that to the interviewee, exactly what they're getting into. You want to do things like behavioral interviewing. You want to give scenarios to that candidate and figure out how do they handle those scenarios. So for instance, if a big situation for you guys is integrity, making sure the person has an integrity, you want to ask questions about what situations were they in where they had to choose between something that was ethical and non-ethical, and seeing how they respond to that and how their thinking is. Of course, someone's going to try to give you answers that appease you, but you want to make sure you understand the process, their thinking, right? Because if you understand that, you understand who this person is individually. When you do interviewing, they should give you a situation, the action they did, and the result, the SAR methodology. If they kind of follow that process, then you can clearly track exactly how their behavior was modified and how they handled the whole situation. So you want to make sure you interview right based on your culture. You want to make sure you follow a behavioral interviewing style. Once you have them in place, you want to make sure you have protocols in place they understand on how they can get up to speed quickly. Typically, that's dealing with a lot of training. We record a lot of our trainings. We have a global workforce within our company, SensorMed, and we ensure that we train our people emphatically. Matter of fact, we record these trainings so that anybody that's onboarded, they immediately know what they're expected to do. And also, you want to train on different processes that you have. If, for instance, when patients come in, there's a simple greeting that you like to provide to the patients to make it a friendly atmosphere, you want to make sure that's set in the protocol. These protocols are basically checklists, standard operating procedures that the new employee knows they have to follow by, and then recording that so that if they have questions, they can always go back to the standard operating procedures and follow that pathway. If you do that, then you have people who are vastly onboarded, and more importantly, they understand. The vast majority of people, when they are confronted with something they don't understand, they get frustrated and the job is not enjoyable anymore, and they are more likely to quit. Finally, once you have onboarded them in the process, you want to have constant inspirational ways to motivate them. Yes, money helps, but there can be simple things like making sure that they understand they have time off, making something that's aspirational that they can achieve as they try to grow themselves. People are individuals and they have different things that motivate them. One of the things that we do are quarterly awards that tie into our culture. If you kind of tie into your culture, you're making sure you reinforce the behavior, but also you're ensuring that people are aspiring, saying, hey, even if it's something as a gift card, something as simple as that on a quarterly basis, it really incites people and gets them excited about, I could potentially win a quarterly award. And that guides them to having better behavior and reinforces that across a culture. So having something that's aspirational can really inspire employees to stay around. And last but not least, be human. Ask them about themselves, know their children, know what motivates them. Ask them about their goals and where they see themselves. Make sure you really are genuinely connecting with them, because ultimately people stay in organizations where they feel like they're heard and they feel that they're seen, especially younger employees. That's a real big driving force. 80% of Gen Z employees want to be cared for, want to be part of a bigger organization. And so you want to display that when you communicate to them. So if you follow these processes, interviewing right, using behavioral style interviewing, understand your standard operating procedures as you get people into your company, into your medical practice, and making sure you're recording those trainings, making sure you have aspirational goals that they can achieve on a quarterly basis that really reinforce behaviors that you want to display across your company. And last but not least, you want to talk to them as human beings, making sure you understand their cares and their wants so they want to stay around. So follow those processes and you can avoid a lot of staff turnover. If you like this content, follow me for more, but check out other content that I have about growing medical practices, building your business for the future, understanding new technologies like AI, all this on this channel. So definitely go check it out.